be with you, and I'm really pleased that there's a meeting about trade union organising within the legal sector. As someone who worked in the legal sector for 10 years at a trade union law firm of some repute, I can dismiss any contention that even when you're working for a very ethical, progressive, left-wing law firm, that you don't need legal representation. Speaking as someone who was at risk of redundancy more than once, I think, during my time, thanks to those Tory Lib Dem reforms, in fact, I can say that it was very important that we have trade union representation, because trade union representation isn't just for people with so-called bad employers. Trade union representation is for everyone. And I'm very glad as well that in the introductory remarks that were just made, the idea of trade union organising the legal sector didn't just refer to the lawyers themselves, because every law firm works, every successful law firm works as a team, from the receptionist, the secretaries, the paralegal. And I think we had the last, probably would be considered a sexist phrase these days, but she was proud to have the title, Ginny at Thompson's, the tea lady. She was the last surviving tea lady at Thompson's in the Leeds office, who had been at Thompson's for decades, and she was very much part of the office. The office wouldn't have been the same without her. And I think that's really important, that it's not just about barristers, it's not just about solicitors, it's about the whole legal family. So I'm pleased that Unite and other unions are making clear that people who work in law firms deserve and need legal representation. And I want as well to talk about some of the wider issues actually facing lawyers, because as has been said, the Ministry of Justice has been cut almost more than any other department. And I want to see, even in the difficult climate we have now, people who want to become lawyers having the freedom of choice to follow their aspiration to work in whatever area of law they want. After I was the first person in my family to go to university, I used my education to return to Leeds, where I was from, and become a trade union lawyer for over 10 years. Other people I went to law college with wanted to become legal aid lawyers. Sadly, they couldn't, because they had to go with whichever firm could fund their training contract. And that's what really inspired me to develop the policy which I announced yesterday in my conference speech of Labour's new Community Lawyer Initiative. £18 million of new funding to fund 200 training contracts across the country in law centres, so that we can pass on the torch from the current generation of community and social welfare and legal aid lawyers to the next generation. And that was part of an announcement also of £20 million of new money to usher in a golden age of law centres. And the good news about those policies, in fact, all of the 9 policies I announced yesterday, was that the Shadow Chancellor has signed them off. I wasn't working off the hoof there trying to get it passed. It was all signed off with the Shadow Treasury team. And of course, I announced that in the first 100 days of a Jeremy Corbyn government, we will reverse all the Tory cuts to early legal help. And of course, trade unions do a huge amount of legal work, because when you're fighting for justice for working people, there's many different arenas that fight takes place in. It takes place in Parliament, it takes place on the picket line, it takes place in the Employment Tribunal. Yeah. And wasn't it fantastic when Employment Tribunal fees were abolished as a result of that successful case in the Supreme Court? Yeah. I remember the time when Employment Tribunal fees came in. I remember sitting in the office at Wellington Street in Leeds, just by the train station at Thompson's. I remember putting my first ET1 claim form in after Employment Tribunal fees had been introduced. I'd got the content of the ET1 claim form approved by the claimant. The union had approved it to be lodged with the Employment Tribunal. We were ready to go with this case. And what flashed up on the screen of the government's own Employment Tribunal service, it said, and I'll never forget it, customer, please enter your credit card details. And I thought to myself, once you start viewing people who have been robbed of their rights by the rich and powerful as being customers or consumers seeking to purchase a product, then you know that the rule of law and equality before the law is under real threat in this country. There's been talk of bringing back employment tribunal fees again, pitched at just such a level so it escapes Supreme Court judgment, which in essence said those employment tribunal fees were at such a level that they were blocked to access to justice. So we have made it clear, if before we get that general election, a Conservative government reintroduces employment tribunal fees at whatever level, a Labour government, whether or not it's judged that those employment tribunal fees at a lower level are lawful or unlawful, a Labour government will recognise them as immoral and abolish them. I also want to flag up another unwelcome change that's on the way the Conservatives are trying to deny millions of workers their rights by making it much harder for injured workers to actually get their legal costs paid for. And of course, this would make it much harder for unions like Unite and others to provide those valuable legal services that they provide to their members. The government are going to bring this change about the small claims limits, are going to bring this change in Parliament, but let's be clear, when they do, we need to mobilise the whole trade union movement in opposition to that plan under the rallying cry of access to justice. We will oppose it together, and I believe we will defeat it together. Let's not make it the first vote that Boris Johnson wins, because he hasn't had a vote yet. I think it'll be another defeat for Boris Johnson. And if somehow they do get it through, rest assured the next Labour government will abolish it. I'm proud also, as the trade union movement is, to support the struggles of those fighting for justice, including the heroes and heroines at Orgrave, the blacklisted workers, the Shrewsbury 24, the 37 Camel-led shipyard workers, the Hillsborough and Grenfell families. And trade unions have played such a critical role in supporting these important campaigns for justice for working people. And I was privileged to speak at a recent GMB Justice conference in Liverpool on these issues, a city that doesn't need any lessons about the struggle to right historical wrongs. And the trade union comrades, I'm really pleased to say, have also been very strident, and rightly so, in their support for another justice campaign. And that's a campaign for justice for Zane Bangbola. And Zane's father is with us today.
And his mum.
And his mum, sorry, I didn't see you there.
Sorry.
And a lovely picture of Zane there as well. When I first met Zane's mother and father, not only was I obviously emotionally impacted upon by the story they told and of the blocks to justice and information they've got, I was also incredibly taken aback by the ability with which they've organised, the pressure they brought to bear, quite rightly, knocking on doors to get justice. And I think their campaign, when it's successful, can actually be a case study for other families in our country and around the world facing injustice. People shouldn't have to fight for justice, but in the society that we live in, they do. So I do hope that people get the chance to talk to Zane's father and mother tonight about the campaign and find out about how your trade union branches can support that campaign. And as for what a Labour government will do, I promise to you again today that a Labour government led by Jeremy Corbyn with me as Secretary of State for Justice will hold an independent panel inquiry to finally get the truth that you've waited for far too long. So the reality is there are heroes all around us, and I've just mentioned two of them now. But in your own small ways, in our own small ways, we can all be heroes, because lawyers actually, they're very much criticised. More so even than politicians. Politicians deserve to criticise a bit more than lawyers, really. But you make such a difference to the lives of people day in, day out. You can be proud of what you do as young lawyers. You can be proud of what you do, or junior lawyers, sorry. You can be proud of what you do as, I was going to say young socialists, that's out of date, junior socialists, very valued socialists. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all you do in your work as lawyers, but also all you do for the Labour Party and the Labour movement. I'm looking forward to working with you in government, hopefully before Christmas. Thank you very much. Oh, yeah.